Welcome to Podcast 127. What is the last planner system? Find out today.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We're going to talk today about the last planner system, and I really hope you're going to enjoy this content because you heard me talk about it over and over and over. I'm sure you probably, if you're listening to this podcast, you already know what it is, but if I describe it differently and tell some stories and do my best here, then perhaps it can be more easily implementable on your project site. 2 quick notes here. It really focuses on total participation. Meaning you probably remember the days when the general contractor would do the long-term master scheduling and the short-term scheduling for everyone on the project and then pretty much just shove it down everyone's throat. And then the trade partners or the subcontractors in that instance would basically just say, I'm going to do whatever I want to do anyway because they didn't ask me. The schedule they gave me is unrealistic. And then everything kind of descends into chaos and there's just a bunch of punitive negative feelings on site. The other thing is the concept that level of detail in planning happens when you get closer to the work, meaning we can't detail out schedules to the day or to a level 4 schedule 6 months out. We can't predict the future. We can tell the future of what it should be and what our target is, but not what is actually going to happen. So planning out to the day is somewhat silly. In fact, I remember one time a superintendent planning out a project and winning a proposal like this actually by making an 85-page schedule with schedule activities that were down to the day for a plan that was in schematic design. And I'm like, how silly is that? If I was the owner, I would have disqualified them immediately because that's not how you do things. And even though it shows a level of care to go guess, it gives you a false sense of security, and that's a huge risk. So really, we need to be planning down into the right level of detail at the right time and closer as we get to the work. So we'll talk about that today. You're going to love this content. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. So what am I excited about in life right now? The methods of getting people all bought in and headed in the same direction. There are ways to do that. If somebody said, I want the 2-second lean, Paul Akers method in my department, in my group, in my company, there's a way to roll that out with total participation, where people are reading books and studying with us and doing reflections and implementing step by step by step, getting this culture ingrained. If somebody said, I want organizational health in my organization, there's a step-by-step way to do that and to take people with you and to get total participation. If somebody said, I want to change the way we do pre-construction in our company, there's a way to do that step-by-step with total participation. In fact, I'm going to be creating outlines for these and show how that happens in a phased rollout with the people in your organization and doing a podcast on those. So I'm really excited about that because these are methods, these are ways, these are schedules, calendars, and processes that will really get total participation in your organization. So I love it. And more about that in the next couple of weeks. So let me talk about the listeners today. First of all, our 2-week ratings party is continuing. If you want your own player card and to better know your strengths and to really drive your career in a good direction, then reach out. Please make sure that you rate or review on your preferred podcast listening platform and let me know that you did it. And I will personally format you your own personal player card. So here's a little bit of feedback from some of our listeners. So one of these you've heard before, but let me read it. I've really enjoyed your Elevate Construction podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to start your business and sharing your knowledge, skills, and changing the industry for the better. One of your episodes, you talked about creating leader standard work for each of your positions, from assistant superintendent to project superintendent to general superintendent. If you're willing, I would love to see what your leader standard work looks like for each of those positions. So the reason I'm reading that to you again is because we posted that on a blog on the elevateconstructionist.com website. and you can reference it there. Just go to the website under Field Resources, and you'll go down to the Elevate blog, and you'll have that information easy to access right there. So, love that. Hope all of those questions were fully answered. I got another one from a listener that I've been able to connect with, and he's a really good guy, and he said, here's a question, goes back to my subway revisions. How does one deal with a design build that is always changing, but also knowing that if we don't catch it in design, it gets way worse with the client, both in schedule and cost? And so there's really not a one-size-fits-all answer to this, and I know that this person understands that completely, but really it goes back to we have to have the right parameters, the right belief systems, and the right actions on a tactical level. The strategy is going to change every time, but tactically, the key to this is full transparency and documentation. So even though we can't predict the future, we need to see what should happen, and we need to compare all of these design changes against what should be happening, and really make sure that we're notifying the owner and allowing them to see that. Let me give you a couple of examples. So first of all, when it comes down to design changes during construction, right? The best thing that I've found is to have visual roadblock tracking maps in Bluebeam. And when there's a design change and it applies to this room here, let's say they change the layout of the room and the scope of the room, I highlight that room in red, but I also highlight in red or box out or create a polygon in red, not a polygon, but a polyline rather, sorry, around the hallway and the hoist and the side access, showing that there's really no way to do final paint and to final clean and to unprotect the floors if we're changing that one room, so that expectations are are aligned and we're on the same page, and they know, okay, I'm going to be walking my customer through this building, and this room is affected. Now the hallway, the exterior entry door, and the site staging that I'll have in the little fence here for my staging, all of this is affected, and we can deal with that together. And a lot of times they won't want that, and they'll say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Designer, do we really have to change this, right? Is this absolutely necessary? Because I really need this done by substantial completion. Or they'll say, yep, no, that's not a big deal. I don't have users on that end. But then the key is to make sure that you have the right general conditions, that you're getting paid for your extra time there, and your trade partners are getting paid as well. So full transparency and agreement. So if somebody says, I'm going to change this area, I first and foremost say, is it visual? Are you communicating it to the owner? Are you writing it in the meeting minutes in the OAC? Is it on your critical decision log? And do they know the consequences of what is happening and the realistic end date? Don't try and absorb it if it can't be absorbed. And then if they say, yes, I will pay for this, and I will accept this time extension, then you make sure that you have your change order and that you're getting paid for those things. So visual management, making sure that everybody's on the same page, is key. This is a little bit different, or a lot of bit different, than design bid build and CM at risk. If this is design build, then you're on the hook for the eventual design, right? And you're on the hook for the schedule, meaning that the spearing gap is closed. It is all on you. You have to go get it done. So if this is truly design build and you have to change things to fit the pro forma or the design intent or the request of the owner, right? And it's all in-house, that we have to get ahead of those things sooner, right? We have to really make sure that we're getting clarity and managing those visual expectations early, and making sure that we're not getting into a situation where they're always asking for something different. So again, visual management, clarity of expectations earlier, when you can make the most decisions. So here's the key though. The key is to not pass down defects. If there's a problem with the design in a CM at risk scenario environment, right? The designers, if they change it, they need to answer for the impact that it is having with the owner. They need to pay for it. They need to answer for the time extension. If it's design build and we're on the hook for the schedule and the completion of the design, and we have to fill in design concepts that we didn't either understand clearly or detail out clearly, then we need to take responsibility for that and look at what we're doing in pre-construction and make sure that our process is serving us well, so that we don't pass down defects to the field crews where we lose time, where we lose money, and where the workers are having to work overtime and things aren't going well. So make sure that we're bucketing things properly. Whoever you've heard in contracting terminology or in the contracting world, the person who's best able to deal with the risk should have that contract, right? Well, the same thing. The person who caused the variation, the person who caused the changes should have to deal with the financial and schedule implications of that and not pass that down to the contractor and to the workers and have one person pay for the sins of another. So make sure we're bucketing things properly. And again, I would just go back to make sure that the status of the project is always visual. And if we mess this up in pre-construction, let's go back to it and let's see what in our process is not serving us well. Let's make sure that we have the right amount of planning and the right amount of clarity and that we're adhering to and using visual systems, whether that's building information modeling or a completed design or rendering or hand sketches or whatever. How can we get the owner to sign off and to be absolutely clear about what they want? Now, in design build, if we showed them a completed design, and if that's in our estimate, and if we've clarified that, and all of our assumptions and clarifications have been detailed out, right? And there's no ambiguity about what it should look like. And then the owner has changed it, even in design build. Then we need to be talking in a very naked and open way about this is extra time, this is extra money. We really need to detach this from the main portion of the work. It's going to impact the schedule. We're all going to lose on this deal unless we bucket this properly. And encourage accountability. You know, sometimes I think when we get into fast track schedules, fast track design, IPD, or design build, you know, those cultures encourage accountability. And so if the designer created variation, they need to be accountable for that with the whole team. But I still see our old design bid build CM at risk behaviors of, oh, just absorb that. Oh, just take care of that. Oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, it should be fine. Oh, it should cost this. Entering into those newer systems, which are supposed to create accountability, mutual accountability. I would say we're not doing anybody any favors if we're not holding them accountable. And that owner is probably not ready for IPD or design build if they're not ready to do those types of things. So hopefully that answers the question that listener submitted. I will make sure to get them this podcast episode returned back by LinkedIn. And if not, please let me know and I'll get a guest on this podcast that can help answer it with me. So there you go. A little bit of conflict for today. You're not letting everyone weigh in, so they're not all bought in. And here's how we can do it. We can use the last planner system and more integrated systems than we did before. So let me tell you a quick story. This story is about the foreman and then superintendent that I talked to you about on Saturday, and he is just fantastic, over the top. But in the beginning, I mentioned to you guys that we fought. We fought over and over at the beginning, probably the first 6 weeks. And one day he said, I don't know, Jason, why you do half the things you do. And he's really pissed off. And he was leaving the office area and slammed the door. And I was like, hey, we need to talk about this. Well, the problem was, and we ended up getting through it. The problem was, is he was used to just doing his own thing, didn't want to be told how to do it. I wasn't telling him, but he didn't want anybody else in that system. He was used to general contractors just sending a schedule. He would pick out key things that he could and could not meet and just did his own thing. What I was asking from him was commitments and total participation and being a part of this overall system. And then once we got past that little scuffle and I explained to him the thinking and I put him through the Lean Core 90-minute Foreman training and he read 2-Second Lean, he really started to get it and turned out, you know, to be one of our biggest advocates for this system. So he would start to pull plan with us. He would participate in the weekly work planning. He would make commitments. And he was the one that really started to hold everyone else accountable. He was like, okay, if we're all committing to this together and I'm not just in my own little silo over here, then I'm going to hold you accountable. And when we started to track performance and grade, like I told you on Saturday, all the other contractors would look to him as the example, and we would really look to him and his leadership. And that's when I said, you know, when we get total participation in systems like the last planner system, we have to have a good trade partner to lead the way and set the example and make sure that the bar is set at the proper level and give some of the other contractors something to look to. So our current condition, I'm going to start out with our current condition right now and then go to a challenge afterwards. So I'm going to skip a little bit here. or not skip, but put things a little bit out of order. In our industry right now, we try to predict what will happen. Now, it's okay to predict what should happen with milestones, but we try to predict what will happen in our master schedules with an unnecessary amount of detail. And schedules should try to predict what should happen only with milestones. And then we pull to those milestones. And right now in our industry, or what we used to do, is we would tell other contractors what they should do. They would just do whatever they want, and there would be no control, no alignment, and contractors working in a million different directions, and everyone would lose money. They would have more manpower. They would have more materials on site, and it would just be a bad situation. And in the industry, we finish on average over 50 days behind schedule for substantial completion if you take the national average. And that is why, is because we used an old system where we didn't have total participation. So let me talk to you about the last planner system. So let me say this, Foreman, has this ever happened to you, or superintendent, or project management team, or whatever, but specifically for the foreman and the workers? You arrive on Monday morning with a crew of 15, like the schedule says, from the general contractor, and the work is not ready for you. Have you ever had that happen to you? And then finally, all of a sudden it's ready. You're mobilized to a different job site, to a different location, and they say, come back within the hour, right? This is a product of that current condition that I was talking to you about. Most project planning starts with a traditional scheduling system known as CPM, Critical Path Method. Software like Primavera P6 or Microsoft Project are typically used, and the creators of these schedules are often 2 or 3 pre-con or construction leaders, ops leaders, including the general contractor, superintendent, and project manager. And they only have a certain amount of experience. They're not familiar with, well, they're familiar, but they're not experts in all of these trades. They're guessing. Putting together a CPM schedule is you're being a professional guesser. So if you ever go to an LCI event or any of the lean coffees, or you go to the lean blog or read any books about Last Planner, you'll probably hear what's working in the current situation in the current industry and what's not working. So here it is. What's working? It's a vision of the general contractor's plan for the project, meaning CPM. It tells me when the project must finish. And I would say Takt does a better job of that. But yes, CPM schedules are supposed to tell you when the project must finish. It tells me when I need to order materials. It helps me to know who is ahead of me and when they should be done. And it's better than nothing. But what's not working is durations are not realistic. It's a professional guessing game, right? Unless they have the right level of detail in a CPM, or using Takt planning and actually garnering good production rates. But most of the time we don't have good production rates, so it's a professional guessing game. There's very little trade input with the people that know what they're doing. It's not connected to the superintendent's 3-week schedule. People on the job site end up getting crowded or rushed and accelerated at the end of the project every time. Work is often not completed as planned. You can't start activities when planned due to prior trades not finishing because they weren't consulted. Bar charts are hard to read, especially if it's like a 50-page schedule. Often schedules are just for the owner, and even they can't read them. Schedules are not even followed because nobody can read them, and then sometimes there are 2 schedules. So these things are not working in our industry. And so to summarize, the main things that aren't working is there's little trade foreman input or buy-in. There's a lack of a colorful, visual, understandable plan, and lack of clear tracking to see if it's actually working. And this creates waste. And one of the main wastes in construction is the underutilization of workforce potential or the genius of the team. And this has to stop. So here are some Last Planner basics. Last Planner, sometimes referred to as Last Planner or LPS, is a production planning system designed to produce predictable and reliable workflow and rapid learning cycles in programming, design, construction, and commissioning. It's collaborative, conversational, commitment-based, and it's meant for everyone to understand the work that is to be accomplished by each trade contractor, trade partner, and to remove roadblocks and assumptions out ahead of the work. And so we would encourage you to plan in greater detail as you get closer to doing the work, to produce plans collaboratively with those who will do the work, to reveal and remove roadblocks ahead of the work so that work can move forward, to make secure and reliable promises, and to make sure promises are kept. And then to continuously improve as a team and remove waste from the process. And so there are really 5 key elements to Last Planner, and I'll tell you what those are. Master scheduling, that's the setting of milestones in the overall strategy. Phase or pull planning, that's where you specify handoffs and identify operational conflicts and make sure that you've planned that phase to a level 4 with your trade partners. Then there's the make work ready planning. Those are your look ahead planning schedules to ensure that work is being made ready with materials, information, manpower, and equipment. Then your weekly work plan, and then your day plan. So the system that I like to have in a construction process is that you start out with a Takt plan. That gives you your overall duration. It does that better than CPM. Then your CPM is based off of that flow and that rhythm in the Takt plan. And then you're able to create graphical schedules that represent your CPM schedule that visually show you on one page how it's doing and performing per the original Takt plan. They look like Takt plans, and they also have flow graphics, line of schedule graphics in there. And then you phase plan certain areas up to scopes up to milestones, whether that's 6 weeks or 90 days or 120 days out to the next milestone that you need to target. Get the project team headed in that mini march in that direction, right? Then out 6 weeks ahead, you do your make ready planning where you plan down to a level of detail with your trade partners so that you can plan your materials, your manpower, your information, and your equipment. Then every week you do your weekly work plan where you detail out with 100% commitments to the next Friday, not the Friday coming up, but 2 Fridays from now, right? So that everything's planned out. And then every day you review the plan for the day in your day planning cycle, and then you track your percent plan complete. But even before that, you remove roadblocks. So that's the key system that I would encourage. And if you need help, there are companies out there, like I'm thinking off the top of my head, Relevate is a company that will come do consulting. I will come do consulting for you. If you want to implement this system, it's fairly easy with some facilitation. Because how much nicer would it be that your trade partners are on the same page of how to get to the next milestone? How nice would it be for the project engineers on the site or whoever's doing the procurement, the project manager, to have look-ahead schedules that are being committed to? How nice would it be to have 100% commitments that are geographically coordinated for next week? How nice would it be to look at your scheduling boards, your commitments that everybody made, and to talk every day about how to implement that on a daily basis in the afternoon foreman huddle, and then to communicate that plan to all workers the next morning in the worker huddle and get total participation. Let me just talk about a couple of concepts here really quickly. So when we're doing the Takt plan, we make sure that everything is in a rhythm and the right flow. And because they are in week blocks, it usually predicts the end date of the project better, and not usually, it does every time better than CPM. Because CPM isn't accounting for all of the holidays, the downtime during Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's not accounting for that 20%. And usually P6 will lie to us in proposal schedules and in schematic design about how long it's actually going to take to do that project. So then we sign up for a bad deal, and that's the number one reason that we have crash landings is because, and compression at the end of the project is because we had an unrealistic duration. And even if you have to sell a different duration versus what you can actually build it for, meaning, let's say, for instance, you're competing in a market, right? And you have to sell a certain duration, and you go do that in P6 or in Microsoft Project because you know your competitors are, that's fine. You just have to realize that there's usually a 10 to 20% difference between what you can sell and what we can actually build. And Takt will tell you more accurately what it's actually going to take so that you can get back to that duration with the owner in a transparent fashion collaboratively. Okay. So if you have that, and then you're able to have an accurate CPM master schedule and get good milestones from it, now you have milestones to pull to. So pull planning is essentially the gathering of all of your contractors, your trade partners, having them study the design, understanding the conditions of satisfaction, what milestone are you trying to hit, and then to prepare work activities and put them on stickies. And those stickies will say a couple of things. Those stickies will explain the organization, the activity that's going to happen, the possible constraints and roadblocks, the duration, and it will tell you what things that sticky, that work activity needs to even begin. And so those stickies are made by each of the trades, and it's better to send out homework. And if you need the homework examples or templates, please reach out to me. But you send out homework and everyone has that ready to go. They have their stickies ready. Then you put up on the board, and there's a million different ways to format it, but you put up on the board and you put the milestone in there and you ask yourself, okay, what is the last activity that has to happen? And then that activity will say, for me to happen, or for this activity to happen, I need this, this, and this. And then you invite the other contractors to come up and say, well, I need this to happen. Please put up your sticky in sequence before that. Please put up your sticky in sequence before that. And then those persons will come up and put their stickies up, and then they will ask for things to be happening before them and before them and before them. And it's this collaborative system where you create the sequence together and make sure that you're checking off those needs. Each sticky will say, I need this, this, and this. You check those off as those other contractors, those other people committing, put their stickies up on the board. And then you'll get a complete network for that phase. And a lot of people plug that back into P6 or into Microsoft Project, but I would advise against that unless you're doing higher level phase planning. In that case, it's fine because you have better commitments and you can tie it to your procurement log. But for the most part, you're going to want those on your last planner system, whether it's a software or preferably actually on boards with stickies or on boards with dry erase marker. You plug those in and you put those up, and then those rolling boards, it creates this rolling wave of more detail as you get closer to the work. And then you can use that planning, those sequences in your weekly work planning, and especially your 6-week make ready planning, and then in your day planning, and it can all just feed into those more detailed systems. So now that we've talked about phase planning, which is what you're doing, using pull planning techniques, which is a technique, it's a tool, let's talk about the make ready schedules. At a minimum, we should do this 6 weeks out, meaning on your planning boards, in your conference room walls, on your project sites, you're making work ready. You're scheduling out in that level of detail, and you're making sure that you have really good commitments that you detail out in your trade partner weekly tactical or your afternoon foreman huddles, or separately with your foreman, with your trade partners. And you say to yourself, okay, what sequence does this have to take? What collaborative sequence should be taken over the next 6 weeks to meet the milestones? And you make commitments. And you can use pull planning techniques, but for the most part, you'll keep the sequence, and you will review that sequence on your planning boards together. And then once you're done, you ask your project engineers or your project manager to align procurement and your trade partners to align their planning of manpower, equipment, and tools to those dates so that you can have a better level of commitment than you had in your master schedule. Let's say your master schedule was 60%. Let's say your 6-week, look ahead plans, your make ready plans, that those are at a 80%, 90% level of commitment. Then you get down to your weekly work plans. Let's say that's 100% level of commitment. Then your day plan, that's your execution. Okay. So when you get down to your weekly work planning, you go into your trade partner weekly tactical or your weekly planning meeting or your weekly work planning meeting or your last planner meeting, whatever you call it. I hope you don't call it subcontractor meeting anymore, but you go into that meeting and you ask the question, what happened last week? How are we doing this week? And let's plan next week with 100% commitments. The trade partners already have their stickies made out. They're already up on the board or in the software. And then you go down day by day and make sure that geographically they fit, that there's no trade stacking, that commitments between activities are made. And then you review the entire system, the entire plan for the next week, and you get everybody to commit and say, I commit to this and I commit to manpower. And you make sure you have the right person in the room. And then you create your weekly work plan, send it out to your trade partners. Everybody's heading in the same direction with an aligned plan, and you have a better chance of accomplishing that, right? And if you do that and then use that same weekly work plan and check it on a day-to-day basis on your afternoon foreman huddles and execute work and then communicate that to the workers, you have an even better chance. Now, if in that system your focus is the fanatical removal of roadblocks, then you're headed in the right direction. Visuals, putting the roadblocks inside the actual schedule, having a list, anything that you can do that your trades will use on your project site that you're comfortable with to daily remove roadblocks so that these commitments can be kept is what our first focus should be. It's a leading indicator system. And then you would track percent plan complete, percent promises complete. How many of these commitments did we actually make? And you're targeting over 80%. You're targeting 100 ideally, but if you have 100, some people think that, people are sandbagging and it's easy to make these commitments. But really, you're only making a commitment if you hit it on that day, not earlier or not later. So you're targeting over 80% and really heading to a higher and higher score of percent of promises of commitments complete. And if you track these, and you should, and why you didn't hit or the trade partners didn't hit their commitments, you can start to see patterns and correct those patterns in the system, in the operations, in the processes that you use. And so whether you're doing this on a software where it's easy to track, or you're using stickies and you just count the stickies that were committed to or not committed to on a daily basis, or you're using dry erase marker and you're putting green check marks on the ones that you met and red X's on the ones you didn't meet, the key is to track your percentage and to track the variances, the reasons you didn't hit those commitments, and fix the procedural operational process problems in your system. So let me give you a couple of really neat behaviors. So here are the keys to success. Collaborate, really collaborate. And this works with IPD as well. Flow where you can, pull when you can't, push when you must. And this is a list for you guys. So if you ever want this list, let me know. Number 3, identify all predecessors and constraints and roadblocks and tag a responsible party for all commitments, all activities, and remove roadblocks as you go. You can't make a reliable promise if you can't say no. If you say no, expect the team to ask what they can do to help you get to a yes. Break work into smaller batches to increase flow and allow the next work to start earlier. Focus first on work that releases other work. Number 7, identify work that can be done at any time, meaning your backlog, and keep crews working if planned work is impacted for some reason. Number 8, work as a team, optimize flow on the whole project, not just your piece. Number 9, facilitators remain neutral, focused, and fast-paced. Number 10, encourage each other, help each other, and work as a team. And here are some Last Planner system rules. Pull from a milestone and include mini milestones every 2 to 3 weeks to assure they are being met. Number 2, write your own tags. Take ownership for your own work. Number 3, be trustworthy. Don't sandbag activity durations. An activity finished too early is just as unreliable as one that finishes late. Number 4, do not remove other people's tags. A tag is a promise. If someone else moves it, it's no longer their promise. Number 5, if you need to move your own tags, do so in the presence of others. Identify the consequences and have a discussion about it. Number 6, be on time for meetings. It shows respect. Number 7, meet daily to talk about these in the afternoon foreman huddle. 8, if a commitment is missed, turn the associated tag 45 degrees and don't move it. Number 9, if your missed commitment must be performed another day, make a new tag, leave the old tag, do not move the original tag. This is a part of the accountability and the PPC tracking. Number 10, meet weekly in your trade partner weekly tactical to make sure that you're planning out the next week, creating your weekly work plan, talking about percent plan complete, and most importantly, removing roadblocks. Strive for 100% percent plan complete, and consequently you will achieve 80 or 90% percent plan complete. And make sure that you hit all of your milestones and keep workers working evenly. And always practice continuous improvement. And so here's the challenge. Learn more and more about the Last Planner system. Get help. Get help from a company like Relevate or from Elevate Construction, from us. Get some help. Get facilitation. Implement this. I promise you, you will love it. Make it company specific. You don't have to follow every little rule. You have to make sure that you follow every rule if you're going to call it the trademarked Last Planner system. But you can tailor this to your company, and I know how to do that. Just let me know. I'll help you out. And know when to use Takt with your P6 and with your Microsoft project, because Takt works really well. And if you use Takt on your project, the Last Planner system ties to it beautifully. So in closing, I hope this has given you just enough information to be curious about Last Planner and to go try it for yourself. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.